Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today, I have Dr. Keren Tsuk. She's a keynote speaker, a consultant, and a thought leader in the realm of 21st century leadership. She's the author of Mindfully Wise Leadership, The Secret of Today's Leader, and she's joining me from Tel Aviv, Israel. So your electrons have traveled far to be with me, Keren. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
I'm looking forward to talking. You know, you came to me through Lee Hayes, who is a dear friend, and she represents some really great speakers like you. And so I am thrilled to get a chance to get to know you and to talk with you here on speaklikealeader.show. So let's start with a question that I often begin with, because I think it's just a great question. Who's one of the early leaders that made a real impact for you? And it could have been somebody that you actually worked with, you know, side by side, or it could have been just one of those early moments when you read a book or you saw a quote or something, but it stuck with you. What's one of those?
Great. So can I give two?
Yeah, give us two. Sure.
So I have a direct influence and an indirect. So I will start with the inspirational one because I thought about it. And when I was learning in university for the MA degree, I took a course with Professor Kunda that he wrote a book about engineering culture, control and commitment in the high-tech corporation. And I really loved this lesson, and I was really involved. And a few years later, I went to my own path and conducted my own research in a high-tech company, a case study. And in hindsight, I understood that it was my inspiration because it really resonated within me, what it taught us and the study it conducted. And it made me also conduct my own study in my path. So I think this is being a leader, being a leader. I think when you fulfill your calling and bring it into the world, you resonate with other people, right? You inspire them without even knowing.
Yeah. Now, what were some of the things that stood out for you from his engineering culture in high-tech corporations? Like what's one or two of the things that, he taught you when you were studying that made you go, aha?
He actually talked about the way the corporate world controls their employees from normative control, how they make people think like the corporate. And, for me, it's really important the other way around, that leaders nowadays in the workplaces will enable employees to fulfill themselves and bring the whole self to the workplace. So it's the opposite. So something resonated within me, the control aspect, and I wanted to know how we can do it differently nowadays and create other cultures. So something in the content, resonated with a deep motivation within me. So it caused me to go forward with it.
Well, that's cool. So his thing was how the corporation could control the workers, but now you're focused on how the workers can bring their full selves to work and have a major impact on the corporation.
That's right. This is the opposite that I'm bringing, because when I conducted my research, my leading question was, what is the role of leaders nowadays in leading financially successful organizations alongside motivating their employees for meaningfulness, from intrinsic motivation, in order to enable them to fulfill themselves and to be creative and for the organization to be innovative. So you see, I looked for the opposite way. And what I found is the crucial element that we need to embrace nowadays as leaders is the mindfulness aspect. It's really being present and listening.
Well, so tell me about that. Tell me about, I guess that's what your book is about, Mindfully Wise Leadership. So, what are the main challenges for leaders today, and how does your book address those challenges?
So the main challenge, I think, for all of us is to listen, right?
Yes.
We love talking, but we less love listening. So I think the book is about how to be a mindful leader, how to better listen to ourselves, first of all, to our employees, to our customers, to the changing needs of the market in order to create engaging workplaces and better products and services, right? So it starts with
Yeah.
being present and listening to what's really needed now in this moment, and not acting upon our automatic behavior, and not that is not connected to the day to day, and living in the stories that we are telling in our minds, but without any connection to what's happening in the here and now.
Yeah. It reminds me of, because you and I both work with top leaders, and my work often centers around things like leadership presence and good communication and how to actually influence people instead of just talking at them, but to have them take it on. And one of the things that people want, I think, I hear a lot, is just to be more charismatic, as a leader. And one of the things that I love is a definition I heard years ago that plays into what you just said. It's a definition of charisma, and I love it. It's more of a question, but I learned years ago, what if charisma is really nothing more than just being fully present with no ulterior motive?
I love it.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, because it's about the way you show up. There's a saying goes that people won't remember what you said. They will remember how you made them feel.
Yes, 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 exactly.
Right.
And there's actually neurobiology behind that, and that's the quote that I end most of my trainings with. And I always ask people at the end, does this sound different to you now than it would have at the beginning? Because we go through all the neurobiological aspects. What I say a lot, Keren, is communicating with human beings is not logical. And then everybody laughs, and I'm like, yeah, you might have noticed. It's not logical, it's biological.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand the biology, you can make it logical again. But logic by itself, while necessary, is not sufficient. It's not enough.
It's amazing because what it resonates within me, that in my case study, my research, and in my workshop and transformative courses, I bring the communication aspect because I really believe it's crucial. And what I found, that there are two layers of communications in the day-to-day, but especially in the workplaces, right? So it's the rational communication, right? Cause and effect, rational, logical communication. But there's another layer that we don't use. It's the emotional layer, right? It's our feelings,
Yes.
what we are going through, what are sensations. And what I offer the managers that I'm working with is to create a complete communication, meaning bring also the rational aspect, but also the emotional aspect. Because first of all, the emotional is, you need to start with it in order to engage the other person. Because if you start and say, John, I see that you're struggling right now. How can I be here for you? Or I see that you're struggling because it's really important for you. However, I feel frustrated because I was really trying to reach out, but you didn't cooperate. So this is what happened. So how can we go forward? So this is the tool I really love to give my managers, because it's a complete communication, right? It's also giving place to the person, and then it feels seen, right? And once I feel seen, I will listen to you. Otherwise, I will go against you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. I think that we probably approach things very similarly. So that emotion, I love a complete communication includes the rational and the emotional. I think that's really brilliant. And it's very true. And, your focus is on culture. It sounds like you've got a big background and focus on culture. And I wonder what you would say, because one of the things that I believe is that a lot of leaders think they don't have interesting stories, but I think that that's totally untrue. And I think it's really important for leaders to go identify their stories and share their stories, because I believe that the leaders' stories are like the mythology that creates the culture. And I personally believe that culture eats strategy for lunch 7 days a week, because strategy arises out of culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so for leaders to find those moments where they got inspired or they learned a hard lesson, or I mean, I tell people anything you still remember at your age, you know, anything you still remember, that is worth sharing with people. Because think of all the things that happened that you've forgotten, that you'll never even think about again. But that thing that you remember, that moment you learned an important lesson, that thing that taught you one of your values or your principles, if you tell that story, that's how you get it into the mythology that's creating the culture of your company. Would you agree?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I think it's really essential. However, I do want to touch about you talking about communication. I think what's crucial
Yep.
nowadays in communicating is the ability for leaders and individuals to be vulnerable and to be show up authentically. And once you show up, and this is actually the story as it occurs, because once you're authentic and you don't need to show a rosy picture, but you can be yourself and show
Yes.
your vulnerability. So then people will connect with this vulnerability and they will also show up fully and bring their truth, self, and communication. So then you can create, I think, a great culture that really engage uniqueness in the day-to-day and people to show up fully. And so I think the
I
story is important,
yeah.
but it's important to write it as you speak, to do it as you experience it.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I totally agree. It cannot just be the rosy picture of how great I am and here's the thing that I want to tell you. And no, it needs to be that authentic, vulnerable story that leads to the insight, that leads to the lesson. So, and you need both, right? Otherwise, people are just going to be like, well, clearly he's special and I'm not, so forget it. But if, and there's a great saying you might like, I'll share it with you, from a guy named Les Brown, one of the most popular, speakers in the whole world.
Yeah.
He told me years ago, people don't connect with your successes. They connect with your messes. Your message is in your mess. And it's not just complaining, but it's where did you fall down? Where did you get hurt? Where were you embarrassed? And what did you learn? Right now, that is a really powerful leadership story that's going to impact your culture and have people connect with you. Yeah.
I have a good personal story you want me to share that connects to my leadership
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
vulnerability. And
Yes.
I just shared it with my participant today in the course. So, I lead retreats. We take 3 or 4 days to retreat from the day to day and to practice mindfulness and better connecting with ourselves and others. And usually on the retreats, on the morning, we hike to a mountain, to the top of the mountain, silently and meditating there. And then we going down of the mountain back to the place to continue the workshop. And in one of the first retreats that I led, I felt and I really enjoyed myself. But I was the leader, so I didn't feel comfortable pausing and stopping. So I really held in the pain and continued going as usual, but I was limping. And when we got down to the place, they told me we said and continued the conversation. And one of them told me, wow, it looks like you really hurt your knee and you continued going as business as usual. And I said, actually, I really was hurting, but I hold it on inside because I don't know why I didn't want to feel the pain. I was the leader. And one of them told me, yes, probably because you were the leader, you didn't feel comfortable showing vulnerability and pausing and taking us all back. And I said, you're actually right. So we had a really interesting conversation about it. How, as a leader, we don't feel comfortable showing up fully and being vulnerable because I'm the leader. So I need to be tough now and lead it. And I don't want to pause all the group. So this was an interesting conversation. And after a few retreats, I led another one. And I was really going through a personal struggle in my personal life, through a tough time in my life. And we started in the third day, during the retreat, it's a really transformative experience. So things are, blowing up and then they go out. So in one of the retreats, in the morning, we started the retreat and I started crying because, it came out. So I let it be. Okay, and then at the end of the meditation, I wanted to start facilitating. I'm the facilitator, I'm the leader, I need to start. And I started, but I couldn't because I was still crying and it didn't stop. I couldn't control it. So I was trying to speak, but it got stuck in my throat. And then one of the participants asked me, "Can I give you a hug? Do you want a hug?" And I said, "Yes, I want a hug." And we stood in the middle of the class and we were hugging. And it was a really touching moment. And afterwards, the feedback that I got from the participant, they told me, you were so vulnerable, and it gave us legitimization to show up fully and to show us
Yeah.
our weaknesses. So, it's I think understanding it through the process and embodying, implementing in the moment. I think this is the leading by example, and this is the real story that people will connect when they see what you talk about. Also, leading by this, the way walk the
Yeah.
talk, right?
Yes, you got to walk the talk. And, one of the things that I've noticed that I think you talk about is the fact that for whatever reasons in business, most of what we see modeled is not only not what works with human beings truly, but it's oftentimes 180 degrees the opposite of what works. And it's like you said, we all get this false impression from what we see in the workplace that, a leader needs to be tough, a leader can't be vulnerable, a leader, but human beings have mirror neurons, and we mirror what we see going on around us, in the people around us. And we especially mirror our leaders. So if you as a leader are shut down, emotionally unavailable, trying to be tough, trying to keep it all in, that's what everybody else is going to be like. And it's not going to be a fulfilling environment, and you're not going to get people's best, and they're not going to open up to you.
That's
right.
Yes. There's another example that a leader went through my course, and we touched about this way of communicating and being vulnerable and authentic and empathic. And actually, she went through a really tough times during the coronavirus transformation. Beyond the fact that all of us struggled, she also went through a really difficult divorce. And she was leading 20 people, and nobody knew what she's going through. And after the course, she told me, I'm going to share with them what I went through now. I want to open it.
Yeah.
And, she came back to me and she told me, wow, it was amazing. Because once I opened up and shared with them what I went through, first of all, they were really empathic toward me. And it also touched me. And the second thing she told me, it gave them the legitimization to show up fully. And one of them said that he feels lonely, and the other one said that he's burnout. And she said, wow, it was created such a deep connection that now we can do anything together because.
Yes.
So I think
that's a really important lesson. Well, and you talk about tensions in organizations and the specific tensions that leaders need to hold and embrace nowadays. And I think that there are a number of factors, and I'd love to hear whatever I'm missing here. But one is just, I think that, I'm in my 50s, and I've watched people just become much more open, and I've watched people become more authentic, and I've watched what works in organizations. I don't think command and control and top down and I'm the boss and you're the employee, I don't think that ever worked very well, but I just think that works way less well now than it ever did before. And so I think that this authentic openness is more important. And then we went through coronavirus, right? And we went massively virtual. A huge amount of stuff we're doing now is virtual. And one of the things that I think is, if you're not open and vulnerable and honest with your employees, that's just ultra dangerous, because then they're not going to feel comfortable being open and honest with you, and you're not going to hear about problems until it's way too late, because they don't want to tell you, because you're setting this example of we're not going to admit anything and we're going to be close. So I think that this move to virtual has just upped the ante even more on what you're talking about, this mindfulness, this authenticity, this openness. So, what are some of those, in your words, what are some of those specific tensions that leaders need to deal with right now?
So, the modern workplace contains a lot of tensions between the long term and the short term, between the employee needs and the organization needs, between speed and quality. But what I found, the crucial, the central tension that I found nowadays that leaders will need to learn and to embrace is between the doing mode and the being mode. Because as leaders, we learn that we need to be really busy, right? And to have the right resource and to be occupied and to do stuff all day long. Like, it's a little bit like the dogs that runs after the tails. But the new leadership knows, you like it? This is what we're doing.
Yeah,
right?
it's true. Yeah, for sure.
And there's also an article from Harvard Review called the busy is the new stupidity. Okay, because, it's enough. We don't need to be busy all day long. And we need to learn to be present, to pause, to reflect, to listen, and then do from this place of deep listening. And then we'll maximize, we will invest minimum effort and gain maximum results because we will really listen to what's needed in the moment. But it requires us as individuals and leaders to be able to contain the uncertainty, to not know the answer. And it's not comfortable for us, right? We like to show a coherent identity and to show that we know all the things. But no, we need to, and I think it's really the new skill that we need to acquire nowadays because, the new normal is the uncertain, right? Yesterday it was the corona, then Putin, tomorrow it's another thing. It's the new normal is the uncertainty that we need to deal with. So we need to have an anchor and to be able to pause and listen and from deep listening move forward. Otherwise, we will really invest a lot of energy and won't have the right and fine-tuned results. This is how I see it. What do you think about it?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think, first of all, I think busy is the new stupidity is just freaking hilarious. And, what you're saying about uncertainty reminds me of something I haven't thought about for quite a while. And it's funny that I haven't because I have never lived in more uncertain times than the past 2.5, 3 years. And I remember one of the really big moments for me in my career and my development as a human being and as a leader was I realized that I would sell myself out for certainty. Right? If I gave somebody a proposal and they didn't get right back to me, I would be very tempted to just write them back and say, listen, if that's too much, I could give you a 20% discount, like all kinds of places in my life, I would completely take myself out at the knees just to have certainty. Mm-hmm. And I saw how much that was hurting me everywhere. And I thought about it for a while and I came back and I created the possibility for myself of being at ease with uncertainty, which was highly unnatural for me. Mm-hmm. Right. But I focused on it. I mean, I even put stickies up that wrote at ease with uncertainty. And every time I'd noticed that I was getting ready to do something stupid because I was uncertain, wanted to be certain, I would pause and step into being at ease with it. And my income doubled almost overnight, right? And my influence and everything just got vastly better when I lived with that uncertainty. And it's nice to be reminded, right? Because I could use a little more at ease with uncertainty in my life right now. But the big awakening for me was how willing I was to sell myself out just to get some certainty. And the other thing that I realized was anybody with any real power has massive uncertainty. Mm-hmm. It just goes with the territory, right? If you want to be powerful and making a difference and you want to be a leader and you like, the bigger that gets, the more uncertainty comes with it, just guaranteed.
That's amazing. I really like the practicality that you gave the example because yes, this is what it means. We want to close this space, right? We don't want to be in this space, but the ability to hold this space, as Viktor Frankl say, mindfulness is the space between the stimulation and the response, right? So as we rather
Yeah.
this space we have a free choice to choose our behavior. Otherwise, you acted upon your automatic behavior, only not to feel
Yes.
the unpleasant feeling that you felt and the insecurity.
Yes.
So I think it's a great example. And yes, I think we need to embrace, and when you want to create a leap in your career and your life, sometimes you need to be in a period that you don't know where you head. You can know where you want to head, but you don't know how you will get there. And you need
Yeah.
to be able to hold this place in order
Yeah.
to help, to enable it to evolve in the right direction, right? Otherwise, we do more of the same, and we won't be
Yeah.
creative, and we won't be innovative, and it will be boring also. Okay, I don't know. I'm an entrepreneur, so I need things to be changed, otherwise it's boring. But maybe
Yeah. Uh-huh.
not everybody's like me.
Yes. High stimulus. I think we're similar. Now, I love the Viktor Frankl quote because when you talk a lot about, it's even in the title of your book, mindfulness. And so I think a lot of people hear that and they wonder, okay, well, does that mean I need to go buy some prana yoga pants? Does it mean I'm going to have to, sit there on a cushion and go om? So when you talk about mindfulness, I'd love for you to share that Viktor Frankl quote again, and then tell us, does it have to mean yoga pants and meditation? Like, what does mindfulness mean to you?
Okay, so I will continue the Viktor Frankl saying, as I said again, the space between the stimulation and the response. Then we have a free choice to choose our behavior. And the definition that I give mindfulness is actually the ability to be aware of an experience that I'm going through. It can be a thought that runs in my mind, an emotion that I'm feeling right now, or a process that I'm going through in a non judgmental way and without being managed by it. Because let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Well, I was traveling a lot to Hong Kong to teach there in the university, and one of the trips I was with a colleague. And I also taught the 10 hours in the master degree, and also afterwards we had the 2 hours to create a presentation for a potential client that we wanted to succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we started creating the presentation, and I asked them a really naive question about the structure of the meeting. And as I asked him, he lost it, and he talked toward me in a really unpleasant manner. So I was really offended. So in this moment, both of us were smart and said, okay, let's meet in an hour. And when I sat back from the situation, beyond the unpleasant feeling that I felt, I tried to understand what's happened there because I couldn't understand the context. And then it came to me. I understood that when I'm stressed out, I like to ask questions to feel in control, because nobody has control, but to feel in control, okay? And then to feel, because I'm quoting, yeah.
The illusion of control. Yeah. I know that very well.
And then I understood that he also is stressed up, but versus me, he keeps it all in. What's happened? And then, like a volcano, right? The stress managed him, and he got to speak toward me in an unpleasant manner. He didn't control it. The stress controlled him. So then I had a free choice, and I decided that now we have only 1 hour left, and we want to succeed with the client. So I decided to be professional and not speak about it right now, because I understood he can't contain it right now. And then after the presentation, we will be in ACE. Then we'll have a conversation about coordinating the expectation. Now we need to act towards each other. And this is actually what we had. So we also succeed with the client with the presentation. And afterwards, we had a really difficult conversation. But in a paradoxical way, it deepened the trust between us, because we really talked about what's bothering each other and how we can act better together. So, this is a great example for mindfulness, because this is the point that I created the space between the stimulation and the response, and I had the free choice to choose how to manage my emotions. I didn't disconnect from my emotions. This is important to say, because, if I would have disconnected with my emotion and continued business as usual, this is not being mindful for me. The ability to be mindful is to connect to our complete experience and to manage it. So I decided to manage my unpleasant feeling and give them place in the right time. And then I also achieved my goals, right? Because if I would open it before the meeting, it couldn't contain it. So it also, nothing good would create it out of it. So this is, for me, being mindful. It's actually increasing our self-awareness and understanding, connecting to our internal experience, to our internal world, and working with that instead of being managed by our internal world. Because if we are not mindful, we are managed by our internal world.
Yeah.
And according to your question, if we must meditate, I really highly recommend to meditate, because when we are meditating, it's create physiologically the space between our thoughts. And this is what actually creates the space between the stimulation and the response. We can also do it by consulting with a colleague, a psychologist, or going out to nature to clean our mind. There's various kinds you can do it. But I think you don't need to put it. I don't do yoga. Okay, so you can find what works for
you. But yeah, I highly recommend meditation as well. And I think that it's kind of like going to the gym for putting that space in between the stimulus and the response, right? Getting that space to start to occur as bigger.
It's actually training our brain. Our brain is kind of a muscle. It's like you're going to the gym. It won't be enough to go once, right? So you need to maintain it. So the ability to pause even for 5 minutes, it creates this also neuroplasticity that we so need, right? The agility, the way to act differently and to let go of unproductive behaviors that we have in patterns. So I think it's with the practice.
Well, I think that one of the things that sometimes takes people out is that they think, oh, well, if I can't meditate for 45 minutes, then I can't, No, I read a study where they had people meditate for 3 minutes a day for about 8 days. And by the 8th day, they could already see a noticeable thickening in the prefrontal cortex, which is where we have that agency and that ability to choose versus just the amygdala reaction, right? So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to get barefoot and, say Om for 45 minutes, 3 minutes a day for just a little more than a week, and you're already having physiological impact in your brain.
Amazing. I have a colleague that says you can meditate for 1 minute, but commit for 1 year. The practice
that's good.
Good, huh? To do it continuously.
Yeah, that's good.
But the fact that you are engaged and you're continuously doing it, it has an impact. So it's this is what's important. And yes, 3 minutes, that's good. Also 5 minutes. You don't need to sit 30 minutes, And I really recommend, I call it a transition meditation between meetings. When you come before a new meeting, take 3 minutes to listen to music, to take deep breath, and then you will come fresh to the other meeting. You will be much more productive, present, and efficient, right?
Yeah. I totally agree. So, I noticed we're coming up on our time here. Is there anything I didn't ask you or anything that we should talk about before we go?
No, I really enjoyed our conversation. It was a great conversation. And I think we touched about the important thing about communication, leadership, inspiration, being able to pause and hold and embrace the uncertainty and create your anchor and your center and walk from this place so you achieve much more.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, I couldn't agree more, Keren. I mean, it's kind of like we're preaching to the choir here, talking to each other, but I certainly hope that, you listening, I just think that this is really important. And I do think that this is at the root of great leadership and kind of always has been. And I think that in the 21st century, where we are right now, especially where we are in terms of all this uncertainty and the way that the upcoming generations of workers and leaders and collaborators that we're all going to be dealing with here are thinking, your advice is just crucial, Keren. And so I'm glad you're out there doing what you're doing. I'm glad you're spreading the good word. And I just agree very much with you. And I think that it's what it's going to take for us to make it as a species, So it's important beyond just succeeding at work, it's important to succeeding everywhere.
Humanity, and thank you very much. I also appreciate you spreading the word, they were spreading the same word, so it's important. But yes, only to add a word, the new generation, the Z generation, the Y generation, they are looking for meaningfulness in the day to day to have an impact, right? To find the right integration. So the control doesn't work anymore. In order to lead them, you need to really engage them from a deeper place. And this deep place is
Yeah.
next to emotions, to listen in and to be human and to see them because they want to feel cared and seen.
Yeah.
And this is what
Yeah.
creates. So it's really important for all of us. We want to feel connected, seen, and part of a community of something that is bigger than ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. Well, for some reason, it really brings me back to another Viktor Frankl quote, this whole thing. And I just love this. He said, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but he said, what if we have it backwards when we ask, what is the meaning of life? That's actually backwards. It's life that's asking us, what is the meaning of your life? And we get to say. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's so powerful. And I think it really wraps in with what you're saying, being mindful, being authentic, being vulnerable, you get to bring the meaning to life, right? And I think this is a great way to do that.
Great. I agree with you. So thank you very much. And the last, you can continue for hours, but it reminds me, because we resonate with each other. It reminds me when the coronavirus started, I gave a talk for 300 managers, and they asked me, what do you think the coronavirus came to teach us? And I said, to pause, listen, and fine-tune our way, our products, and our path. So I think this is a good way.
Wow, that is a great question to ask, and I think that's a great answer.
Thank you very much.
That's fabulous. Keren, it's great to get to spend time with you. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you listening for joining us. And if you like the show and you want to give us a 5-star rating and a great review, we would certainly love that. And if you would share it with your friends that you think might enjoy it, that too would be very appreciated. And Keren, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see you next time on speaklikealeader.show. Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.